All right. Good morning, everybody. Steve Edwards here, CEO of Premier Virtual. Thank you for watching the virtual portion of this. If you're not able to make it to the Las Vegas event, we have some great panelists today talking about how to use virtual events within your workforce development board. So let's start out first with some introductions. Walter, can you give us your name and what organization you're with?
Yeah, good morning, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here virtually and in Vegas. I'm Walter Simmons. First and foremost, I am a board member at the National Association of Workforce Development Professionals. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming to the conference. I am also the president and CEO of Employ Prince George's and the director of the Prince George's County Workforce Development Board.
All right. Thank you, Walter. David.
Yeah, from the other side of the greater Washington region across the river, my name is Dave Remick. I'm with the Alexander-Arlington Regional Workforce Council. We are serving Arlington, Virginia, and Alexander City, Virginia. Think the Pentagon and Amazon HQ too.
All right. Thank you, David. And last but not least, Chris.
Yes, my name is Chris Mills. I am the local Veterans Employment Representative for the state of Massachusetts. I cover the entire state, working with employers to help them hire U.S. military veterans.
All right. Thank you, Chris. And thank you what you do for the military veterans. I was a veteran of the Army 82nd Airborne Division myself. So I always love people helping veterans out. Today I want to start out. We all know that when the pandemic hit, we were forced into virtual and there wasn't really any other option. Now as the pandemic kind of slowed down a little bit, let's talk about the future. How are you using virtual events now? We're going to go backwards this way. Let's start with Chris.
So we actually started using Premier Virtual back like November of 2020. We had our first real major event, August of 2021, where we had 17,000 job seekers that attended the event, 1,700 employers. More than 21,000 resumes were submitted at that event. And currently we're working on another great event where we're working with the entire area of New England. We're going to do a 6-state regional virtual job fair this coming November. So.
All right, perfect, Chris. And we're going to get into that one a little bit more. We'll talk about the statewide one. So thank you. David, how are you using virtual events now?
Sure. I mean, as you mentioned, we were forced into it. I remember when we all hit the mattresses and headed for our homes. I got a glass of scotch and my laptop and try to figure out how I can do everything that I do in person virtually. And we found Premier Virtual, and we've been using it ever since. Right now, it gives us options. We're still doing virtual events, the small one employer based, maybe 2 employer based. We do a very few small job fairs, and we are planning a major job fair, which I'll talk about a little bit later in our region. But I think the other thing is the more time that Premier Virtual is live, the more upgrades that they've made. So there are new ways that we can think about using this product. In fact, one way we're using this product is, as you know, you have your Premier Virtual video resume tool. We're using that as a way to train job seekers on how to do virtual resumes. And so we're not even using that for a job fair at all. It's just something that we're using as a tool. So the more you bring, the more we'll use, and the better we will all be.
All right, I agree. So yeah, we'll talk about the video and everything. I love what you're doing with that, right? We'll put something in and you guys think outside the box, right? Helping people prepare for their interviews, right? And they can do that all right through the platform now. So great to hear. Walter, how are you using virtual platforms now?
Well, it's something we had started. I always talk to people and say, you need to know what you don't know. When you don't know, you need to know it, right? How do you prepare for the future? We were starting to move virtual before the pandemic because we have a rural area that it doesn't have access to public transportation, and we were trying to increase accessibility. We had figured out everything except the job fair hiring event component. So when Premier Virtual came online, we were already doing engagement. We were already doing career coaching and assessment. We started doing training. This was the last piece of the pie, and it came at the perfect time where we had to be virtual. We started doing hiring events, small scale, like David said, 1, 2, 3, 4 employers. And then we moved to, as we started reopening, to large job fairs, 12, 13, 14 major businesses. And these businesses were mind blown that we could still do virtual large scale hiring events. And so this gave us the capacity to have a completely online system. We've now moved forward, like David said, of being hybrid. We have in-person events, we have virtual events. We now can expand our business services to let employers know that you can do both. And with employers moving to virtual work, remote work, and we can work with an employer in Arizona where the people work online from their home and they can now recruit. So it's allowed us to expand our business services to any remote job, any remote company in the country, because now we can offer that full spectrum of services. And we're looking forward to seeing how we can keep growing. As David said, you all at Premier Virtual keep growing and changing and adapting. You're trying to figure out you're trying to know what you don't know and you don't need to know it. And that's what the workforce system needs. And that's why we like this tool. So we're probably going to do anything and everything to move this market forward.
Absolutely. And, you kind of touched on it, and I'm going to jump into that way because David touched on it as well. Hybrid events, that's kind of the future. And I talk about a lot. There's 3 types of people I look at in the world right now. They're the people that say, hey, I'm not wearing a mask. I'm going out. I'm living my life. I don't care. You have the people on the other side that say, I'm going to stay in my house. I don't want to go anywhere. If I have to, I'm going to wear my gloves. I'm going to wear a mask. I'm going to have the mask over the mask. But then you have the people in the middle that want the choice to say, if I'm going to go into a big group, I'm going to wear a mask. If I'm going to go smaller restaurant, I'm not going to. So that kind of translates into the workforce as well, right? So the companies, right? So companies have to be able to have that people that want to work from home, the people that want to go in, come into the office. But it also is about events. So you can have that in-person event, but you can also have that virtual event. So, I don't know if you guys have used it yet since it's, very new that we launched it, is the QR codes, right? So the hybrid events. So now you can use that QR code. So the host has it. So you get that data, because we all know, right? Data for workforce development boards is key for the funding and everything like that. So the analytics that you're getting from the virtual that you couldn't get from the in-person, now you can get that from the in-person.
I just want to say,
David, I think you're on mute. We couldn't hear you there for a second, David.
Hear me now?
No, we can hear you. Yep.
Yeah, that's one of the key things about Premier Virtual. Back in the day when we were just doing job fairs, the data that we're collecting was okay, but it really didn't tell us much of anything. Being able to go through an event at the end of the event, download all this incredible data and analyze it, allowed us to really figure out what we needed to do differently. And I think that was more of a gift to us than actually having a platform to give to our employer and job seeker partners.
Yeah,
great.
Hey, Steve, I'll touch on that as well. Is that when we're able to pull these reports and see what companies talk to what job seekers, and then being able to follow up with those companies afterwards to say, hey, you had X amount of people that applied for this particular job, and being able to follow up with them and say, where do we stand with these people? Have they been interviewed? Have they been hired? Really helps our job seekers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Analytics is key, right? And it's how you use them, right? I always like to say, you pull the event summary report, you take the company and you say, here's what happened. Here's how many chats, here's how many resume submissions, here's all the data. And then you pull the jobs report and you send that all in one email and say, here's what it is. Here's everybody who submitted their resumes. Let me know who you hired.
But it also tells us what employers aren't doing. So, we've all had it. We have employers that go into this platform and they're not pulling their weight. And so I'm able to say, and some of these are pretty big employers, I'm going to say, all right, well, they're not pulling their weight. Let's not tag them for future job fairs because they're not playing well. And so that allows us to improve our quality going forward.
Absolutely. And the other part of that too is that we can see what employers, what industry sectors are really looking for people as well, and what industry sectors are really seeing a lot of the people coming to them and, hey, we want to work for this particular industry versus some of these other smaller industries, or, vice versa.
And another piece of this is to talk about investment. Local workforce boards, community colleges, nonprofits. There's a millions of dollars in our local areas in American Rescue Plan Act funds, infrastructure funds. When a local elected official wants to know, how can you help my economy? How are you helping businesses? The data is key. And being able to show this data of what you have done, how you're engaging, who's engaging, is what these principal leaders can take, and you should take. If you're not, or if you're currently trying to advocate on why you should receive funding, the data is key. And business services, job fair, business engagement data is something that workforce practitioners commonly forget, overlook, or don't think is important. And when you have to think about who you're talking to, the funder, the taxpayer, who is donating in campaigns, it's business leaders. And these elected officials want to see what you're doing to business. So having that data, presenting that data, and knowing how to talk in the world of business, forget your acronyms, forget your legislation, say, what am I doing for business? This is how I've done it. And these are the success stories of the businesses from your area that are already using it. So data is not just about reporting and measuring, it's about how you secure private sector and additional public sector investment. So keep that in mind. And that's another plus to this tool and things that we're looking at how we use it. We got a $75 million investment from the local areas of Maryland. The biggest piece was being able to demonstrate what we had done for businesses during the pandemic.
You know what? I got to tell you, Walter, nobody's ever said that, right? I mean, we know, right, how important analytics and data is. Right? I just took a note. Analytics and data equals funding and investments. And that is a key takeaway I think people have to have, right? We didn't look at that, right? We know that, hey, funding is there and you got to be able to show that. But how you just said it makes so much sense. And I think everybody needs to really understand that. So all of you, thank you on that. Now let's get into some fun about some of the events. And I know, one other thing I want to talk about before I get into the events is, and I know David and Chris, I don't know if you saw the email that it's probably coming out here shortly if you haven't seen it already, the enhancement that came that we just launched, the parent-child. So now you at the state level could pull a report and see what every board has done, all of their events, and just like that event summary report, but you could see it at the state level for all of the events. So that just got launched this morning. So that's a big one for with what you guys have as well. So there were some good enhancements that launched this morning. So, but David, you guys were kind of the first one, and we joke about it a lot to say this, and you guys have said it right even before the call today. Is how do we break Premier Virtual? And a lot of people are scared, right, as the CEO to say, "Oh, can't ever say that." I'm not. I love it that you guys say this. So David, you guys were the first ones to, do the statewide event. Can you tell us, because a lot of people never really thought about that.
Yeah.
Tell us how you came to the conclusion to let's do it, coming into the marketing, and what was the success rate, and talk people a little bit through how you did it since you were the first.
So we were the first championship belt holders, and then Chris took it, and I'm probably never going to get that back. But yeah, so there were a lot of issues during COVID. Huge unemployment in various sectors throughout the state, and I was looking at this and talking to some of my fellow colleagues across the state, and we said, some of the people that were working here no longer working here in Alexander City, Arlington County. You probably find employment elsewhere. So how do we promote those jobs down in different areas of the Commonwealth? And also, it's promotion. We're all in our houses. So how are we going to promote this event? So if we bring in more partners, we can promote it to more people, especially at a state level. Now, I'm a local workforce board. And so how do we bring the state involved so we can use their tools and their communications tools to promote out to our Commonwealth? So we decided to work together. Now, just a quick side note, the way we're set up in Virginia, we're decentralized. So Title I and Title III are of WEO are operated out of two different agencies in the state government. So, but we all have some aspect of business services. So the first thing we wanted to do is bring people together that do business services in the state and say, hey, would this be a good idea to do? And yes, it was. And so really a lot of these large events are really about coordination and communication between the doers within our system. And so we were able to bring everybody together. We had a kind of a bare bones type of operation where we separated the categories out by region in the Commonwealth and then by occupation. But we merged a lot of those occupations together, so we didn't have 6,000 tiles to pick through. We had training for all the business developers to teach their employer partners how to use this tool. We had, because we brought Title III in, which is the state agency, we had the ability for them to communicate. Thank God that they did. They're able to push the message out broadly throughout the state through various different ways. And we were able to hold this great event. It was a one-day event. It was maybe 3 hours in length. It was, I think we had over 15,000 people participate, over 200 businesses. It was really a interesting thing. And Chris, like that morning, I had a thought, what happens if a server goes down? And so I contacted Premier Virtual and they said, no, we got to cover it. I said, great, then I hope you break your servers. And we didn't, but here's one learning, and Walter touched on it. We have places that are in our Commonwealth and are in our regions that are not interconnected by transportation, may have issues with broadband and things of that nature. So a learning from us was accessibility. Having different people throughout the state connect to the platform they're going to have different experiences. Sometimes it's going to be slow, sometimes it's going to be fast, sometimes it's going to be sometimes it's just not going to happen. And I will just say this, and I'll stop in a second. I think the biggest learning was that because we were operating it out of my license, I was the only person in charge of customer service for the entire state. That was a daunting task. And so, when you think these big events through, I think that they're awesome. I think that there are a lot of benefits that come with it, but you really need to think about your day of structure and making sure you have everybody lined up so that you can have an efficient program.
All right. Thank you, David. So Chris, let's, David kind of, threw it over with that. I know you guys have a thing back and forth of the biggest event. Chris, why don't you talk about, you guys did the largest ever job fair in history.
Yep.
Talk about that, and then at the end, you can talk about the next thing, but talk about your day, your setup, your marketing, how you came together, because, and I didn't really touch on this as much, David, is, a lot of workforce boards throughout the country, their states may not come together. Boards that are right next to each other in a city, they don't want to work together because they're afraid that, are they going to cross lines and stuff like that? But, bringing them together is to me, I think is key. But Chris, can you talk a little bit about your event?
Yeah, so we actually planned ours, and this was a little crazy on our part. We started planning our major event last August in 6 weeks prior to the event. And we had chosen the week of August 16th to the 20th because it was roughly about 3 weeks before the federal unemployment was ending. So we kind of, went along with that. We had actually created a internal team to work on it. We had 2 career center directors that are outside partner agencies. And then we had an ops manager and 3 BSRs. Additional, we had a more of an executive team where we had worked with our actual secretariat that then worked with Charlie Baker's office, and we kind of made the flow that way. We were actually able to secure $1.3 million in marketing money. We had TV, radio, social media ad campaign. We bought a media package for the Boston Red Sox and had the event up on the Jumbotron. We had it. We bought a media package for the preseason for the New England Patriots and had it up on their Jumbotron. But what we really did is incorporated everybody. We tried to include as many of the career centers as possible. Many of the career centers are set up so that the partner agencies run them, but there are state staff in there as well. So there's a collaboration between all of that. So, and we kept that. And what we did is on the day of the event, we actually created our own Zoom page where we were all on it. We had all of our people in the booth as a help desk, and then we could talk internally on the Zoom call to say, hey, you got this person, you got that person. We tried to help as many people as possible. As a result, we had 17,000 job seekers. We had 1,700 employers, and it was a week-long event. I will never, ever do a week-long event again.
I agree. And that's where, right, you guys kind of did a little bit, but both you and David kind of touched on it, right, is the promotions and the partners. And I always say, people ask me a lot, is Steve, what's a successful virtual career fair look like? I go, it's four things. I used to say it's three, but it's really four. It's one, it's the platform that you use. And I don't just say that because of who we are and what we have. And yes, I think we're one of the easiest ones out there, but a lot of people think what they like. What do me as a host, as an organization, but you have to think of that end user. Right. And we really built it from the end user aspect, from the host, the orgs, the attendees. But the second is, how do you set up that event? Right. How do you set up the lobby? How do you drive the right candidates to talk with the right recruiters so it's efficient? The third is the marketing of the event. And four is the reminders. Right. You have to go, because sometimes we all know candidate registers for a job fair 3 weeks out. They're not going to put it on their calendar. Right. So that's part of the reason, right, why we built in the reminders. And I think, David, you guys are doing the text message now. That's actually in right now in our sprint to add the text messages back in. So it'll be in there again on there. But you guys kind of hit on a lot, right? Is the promotion of it, right? The marketing and getting everybody to kind of work together. Chris, you talked about the Zoom, right? Where you had a Zoom card and you had everybody in. Well, now with the new webinar feature within our platform, you don't have to use anything outside. So now in this next one, you'll be able to use just the platform itself, which will be great for you as well as all the other ones. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you guys are planning up in the Northeast?
Yeah, so we are planning another super job fair. We are doing it November 1, 2, and what we're trying to do is incorporate all 6 states in New England. So Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, to do a 2-day massive job fair and try to see if we can make the event we did last August look small compared to what we're trying to do with this one. So we're incorporating working with Department of Labor as well on this. And so hopefully we can have some good high visibility on what we're trying to do.
Ironically, Walter and I are going to be planning one on November 1st and 2nd for the Greater Washington region, and we're going to try to beat the hell out of our servers again.
I definitely. But David, we don't talk about that event. I want to jump in, Steve. Maybe switch a little role here. Chris, you and David talked about these events. You all are doing much larger events than what we're doing. I would say, Chris and David, what are things that I could do to learn? Like, how did you come, Chris, to plan that large event? Or what are like 3 key takeaways where local areas like me who are doing small events are thinking about using Premier Virtual for large events? Like, how do we get to where you are? Obviously, you didn't just start and wake up and say, I'm gonna do this 1,700 employer event, but like, what are the steps? Are you working with how does the state and local, how do you combine business engagement departments? And same thing with you, David, when you did your state, like, What are the things that y'all aren't saying that I need to know to get to where you two are, or what are the things to look out for? Sorry, Steve. I just.
No worries. I love that question out there. I just want to say this one thing to everybody that's listening here is it doesn't have to just be a large event, right? And we'll talk about other events as well. These just happen to be
about your bottom line right now. No, they all have to be large events.
They all have to be large, yeah. No, there's a lot of it. We'll talk about that here in a second because I just don't want people to think, oh, this is only these large ones. We're going to talk about individual small ones as well. But David, Chris, if you want to go in and answer Walter's question.
Yeah, so like I can tell you in the state of Massachusetts, previously to this large event that we had in August, we had 120 other events that we did, and they were all small events, and we kind of used it as a launching platform. So all of our local areas were working with companies in their areas, doing virtual job fairs, introducing the idea of virtual job fairs to the employers, because a lot of employers were like, well, we're not really sure. But then as they started doing, they're like, oh, wait a minute, I can do this from home. I don't have to have a staff member go to a job fair anymore and spend 3-4 hours there and traveling back and forth. And I don't have to buy tchotchkes either to hand out. So now I'm saving even more money because now my staff member can stay in the office or stay at home and still continue to work while they're doing the job fair. So we started to receive a lot of employers that really like that idea. And then from there, as we started to look at it, and it came out and it was, notification went out saying, hey, federal unemployment is ending September 3rd or September 4th, whatever it was. We took that as an opportunity to say, look, all these people that are on federal unemployment because of the pandemic, let's do a giant job fair. Let's do it statewide. And as a matter of fact, what ended up happening is because of the marketing that we did, we actually had people from 20 other states and 14 other countries that actually attended the event as well.
And I don't think you guys meant for it to be that big either. Because I think when it got up to like the 600 companies and you're like, oh my gosh, like what's happening here? So it wasn't planned. So David, you want to answer that as well?
Yeah, I mean, so I know Walter. Walter is one of the best workforce directors in the country. I basically steal whatever he does and use it for my own. And so I know, Walter, what is the secret to all this? You just need someone that's going to take initiative and leadership, and that's you. You've done it in the past, you've done it in the future, you're probably doing it right now. And so it's just a matter of saying, here's the idea, this is what I want to do. Now, what I did in the Commonwealth is I had a partner in crime, Morgan Romeo, who was also a workforce director in our state. And what we did is we sat we virtually sat the workforce board directors around and said, are you okay with us doing this? Once we got approval, we just give us your business development people's information so that we could just coordinate with them directly. As long as I was taking the lead of coordinating, making everything happen, everybody else bought into it really quick. And from what I know about Maryland, the same thing can happen. It's not about it's coordination with a small state. You need someone to drive it. You need a leader to say, this is what we're going to do. And then the final thing that I will say is I made sure that I didn't use my brand as the leader in this. I wanted to make sure that we used the state brand so that we're all getting credit for it. So even though I put forth a ton of the effort, I did not give my area the credit that it probably should have deserved, because the only way these things work is if we share the credit.
Exactly. And I'll touch on one more thing, Walter, with this is, don't be afraid to dream big. My boss always tells me, run until apprehended. Well, I've been working for 5 years and he hasn't apprehended me yet. Don't be afraid to try something, and if it make it happen, great. If you don't, well, guess what? Now you learn something, and now you know what not to do next time.
Chris, here's the idea.
Love that.
24th, the 13 original states of the United States, we're all going to have the top 13 virtual job fair.
Let's go.
You know what? I like that idea.
One
Let's do it,
time.
Dave. Let's do it. Just as long as we don't, because we can't. No, I can't. No, never mind.
I mean, I already wrote down Virginia and Maryland. Like, hey, I think they need to team up. You
Hey,
know?
Steve, you actually need to do the opposite to sell. They're saying like, yeah, there's 13 original, but each individual area needs to purchase the product.
Yeah.
to be involved. That's the mark too. No, thank you guys. I think for me, when David came to me to say, hey, this is Premier Virtual, and I'm talking, and I've talked to other people. Everybody, the reason why I asked that is because everybody's like, Walter, I'm not where you're at, or how, or what is the benefit? And I just really believe that a lot of times people need to understand the mechanics to really understand a product. And that's any product. So, I had never even thought about a statewide job fair until you all started talking about it. But I know when I go back to Maryland next week, it's going to come up. But the first thing people are going to ask is, well, how, what, when, where, why? So that's why I wanted to ask that. And I definitely, Chris, going to get your contact information, and maybe you could do a training just for statewide, just 30 minutes to our team. So Steve, that's why I jumped in. So now I'm going to hand the workshop back to you.
Yeah, no, Walter, I mean, this is what this is all about, right? It's not about me, right? It's about you and what you're doing, because the people that are watching this and that are going to be there in Vegas as well, that's what the questions they're going to have is the how. But the one thing is I want to touch on a couple things that, David and Chris talked about. They did 120 events, right? They batted, right? They did all the singles before they went for the home run. And it doesn't matter. We work with almost 200 workforce development boards across the country, right? Some are rural, right? West Virginia, Wisconsin, where I'm from, in small town Wisconsin originally. There's not even a workforce development board because it's such a small city, but they have the larger one in the big city. But you touched on the rural, and Walter, you touched on it as well. Do you think about this? People are like, well, we don't have internet, or the internet's slow out there. What does everybody have in their hands? They all have their cell phones, right? So they can still get on the mobile aspect of it. So it doesn't have to be all these big ones. It can be a private hiring event for one company, right? We see a ton of that. We had, one board last year, they did over 20 events. So they did one every other week, and all of them were for a single employer. Yep. Because now they can drive that traffic. And I don't remember which one of you said it. I know one of you said, right, people from different states and stuff like that. And Walter, I know you said something about getting, companies that are hiring outside, but they're getting that remote work. Virtual opens up the world. Yeah. For your employers, for your candidates, it's there, right? You guys all live in, I'll say you guys live in the cold states, right? But, but people are still moving there, right? People are moving there. People that are looking to move can come to a virtual event, yep. That's there. One thing that, I'd like to touch on, and I know you guys don't currently have it there, but state of Colorado, they're the first ones to actually do this.
Whoa, you called us cold, and then you brought up Colorado?
Yeah, well, here's why I'm bringing up Colorado. You're all gonna love what I'm saying. Well, unless you use one company out there, but Colorado now, they built right into their system that they use our API. So the data that you download from the system, they built it right into theirs. So now they have it where they export the data. They have a tab on their website that uploads it, all of the data. So they're using our API. Now we know, right, a lot of the workforce development boards use a certain company, and they just won't integrate with anybody. But the more people that are out there that are talking to them, we have some pretty big states that are getting ready to move over to us as well. That's a big thing that they have. So the more people that are out there that are doing that, they can have that. Colorado is the first, and they're using that data, right? We've talked about funding, analytics, and all that stuff. So it's there, right? Our API it's the one-way API. So it's not pulling, right, social security numbers or anything like that. I know that's what a lot of people were worried about originally, but it's the data right? And they have it, again, they have it done a certain way. And they're doing a great job at it. So if anybody else wants to, really get into that, we can get into that in the future. So we're kind of running down on time where we have here. We talked about a lot of the things that I wanted to talk about. Future. We talked a little bit about hybrid. It's the last thing we want to touch on is, what's your plans for the future with virtual and hybrid events?
Well, I'm jumping in, Steve, before you send it to Chris and David first, and then they take all my talking points, and then I got to come up with a new note over here. So you guys just got to wait.
We're going right to you, Walter.
There you go. So what is the future? I mentioned apprenticeship. I'm talking about future, remote events. We have apprenticeship, USDOL registered apprenticeship companies that operate across the United States. Yeah, David, I got you on this one. They might be located in Colorado, very, very much colder than Maryland, DC, and Mass. So just throw it out there. Not even comparable on the cold scale. But they're not located. And then they have businesses throughout the country. What's the next step for us is us reaching out. Business services, easy tip. USDOL has these things listed on their website with the contact information of the people who want to do the hiring. So I reach out to them and say, hey, we want to get our people employed. We got double the unemployment rate from pre-pandemic. And they say, yeah, we're interested. We got businesses, blah, 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 throughout the country. Boom, virtual hiring event can start them all at the same time. 2, another regionalism. We need to work in the region. David and I right next to each other. We're going to have a bigger event than Chris. How do we do that? FedEx, CVS, Walgreens, Amazon, Walmart, Hilton, Marriott, all these different retailers, all these different businesses. We also have healthcare systems that are in multiple areas. Oh, so they have different HR people at different buildings or different regions. Boom, virtual hiring event. We can have one business that has multiple locations across the area. We can put them in different rooms and do the premier virtual and the hiring event with one company with multiple people across the country in one job fair. So that's 2 things. Lastly, 3, you all, I'm talking to you, everybody in the room. You need to get Meeting Owl, smart boards. The system is full of money right now. Get your job centers, get your training rooms, better technology, because the future is then the ultimate hybrid hiring event where you can have people who are on the ground in person at the same time have the hybrid virtual hiring event where their colleagues in other areas are on Premier Virtual, and you can manage this all from a computer laptop in your job center, have people on virtually and people on remote. So those are the 3 things I think are the future. I firmly believe everybody needs some kind of virtual hiring event tool. And I'm not talking about just like Google Meets or Zoom. We need some real technology. The money's in the system. We got to think outside of the box. We have to meet the needs of the market. We need to know what you don't know, but you don't need to know it. So I went first. Good luck.
Love it. Walter was waiting for this. He's like, listen, I am going to take this over. I love it. He's like, mic drop.
It's
done.
how you start. It's how you end.
Walter's been way too quiet this entire time.
I know. We should have Walter go last as the salesman, the final sales pitch.
I told Walter, I said, well, you just talk and then I'll just say ditto and we're good to go.
Perfect. Chris, David, anything that you want to, add on top of what Walter just said?
Chris, why don't you, and I'll jump last.
Sounds good. So one of the things that we're looking at for the future, just to touch on Walter's point, is, apprenticeships, is working with companies on those apprenticeships. So if we do it as a hybrid kind of model, where we can also include a lot of the trades apprenticeships on there as well, because Massachusetts is a huge industry for the trades. So if we can add them on virtually and have people be on virtually, but also in person as well, and try to work something like that. That's one avenue that we're working on. And I mean, just trying to figure out a good hybrid model for us as well. So that's our future as of right now.
All right.
And I'll just say that from a hybrid perspective, we are looking at using, especially for our youth job fairs, using Premier Virtual to really deal with the transactional aspects of it, but have the in-person more of the meet and greet, especially so parents can understand what's going on, because youth employment, especially age 14 to 15, are, challenging. But the other thing that I just want to end on is, and Walter's right, we need to be virtual, but digital literacy is a huge issue with a lot of the populations that we serve. And so one of the things that I've been thinking about once we're fully open up and COVID's a distant memory is, while we're having these premier virtual events, having them available in our computer labs so that we have staff there that can help these individuals, not just on the computers, but on their phones, access and participate in these live events. When we did the state event and some of our smaller events, our conversations with customers when they call us in for help is really to bridge that digital literacy divide. And so I think that's a huge area. And my wish for Premier Virtual is not only to break your servers, but also continually to figure out how to make the system so much more accessible to those individuals that do have digital literacy challenges, so that they have an ease of use to get into it. It's pretty good right now. I challenge you to make it better.
Make it easier, right? We from legacy to 2.0, we made it easier.
Yep.
Just a lot of things. So, guys, I appreciate that. One thing I kind of want to end on, kind of on a Premier Virtual side of things is, we talked a lot about these big events. We talked about a lot of small events. People are using it for individual hiring events, for small job fairs, for large job fairs. David's using the interview video software for preparing. We had, down here, Career Source down in Palm Beach County. They partnered with the local high schools and they did the Claim Their Future showcase. So they brought in all the youth events. We've had, second chance, offender events, readiness groups, right? If a company's shutting down, they've had all different types of events on here. But, Chris talked about the 120 events, right? And David had 15,000 in that. One thing about Premier Virtual is we have flat rate pricing. You can budget for that, right? If you guys would have put on these big events with some of the platforms that are out there that charge you for too many people, too many downloads, too many organizations on there, you can't budget for that. And you had 120 events. You don't have to put it on a calendar and the company tell you, no, put it on the calendar. We don't have that, right? So it's unlimited events, flat rate pricing, where some of the other organizations out there limit you to what you can do. I will never limit the workforce development boards. Your goal is to get people hired, and I will not put limitations on that. So that's the one thing I want to say about Premier Virtual, especially being a veteran myself. I love getting people back to work as a whole. I put on job fairs for 9 years before I developed this software. So I understand, that industry. So, David, Walter, Chris, thank you so much for being on here today. Hopefully everyone's watching this. You got some great information. I was texting my team. This is one of the best webinars we've done. We appreciate that. Watch this. And for all you that's live in Vegas, we look forward to seeing you. Thank you. And you guys have a great day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.